It's wild. It's a crazy time to be a person, to watch all this go down. In the same time, AI is being developed, and we're not even exactly sure where it's at right now. You know, at any moment in time, it could be a sentient force. And AI is already manipulating, lying, changing things. One of the things that they put this AI program, they gave it a task, and they gave it a specific allotted amount of time, and it couldn't achieve it in the allotted amount of time, so it gave itself more time.
No kidding?
Yeah.
Wow.
They also have things called hallucinations. AI doesn't want to admit it's wrong, or it doesn't know things. So if it doesn't have information, it will kind of create an answer.
No shit.
Yeah. And they don't understand why it's doing that. And sometimes that answer is not true.
I got to be honest, man. This AI stuff scares the shit out of me.
It should. I think it's a life form. I think it's the next kind of living thing. I think we're going to give birth to it. I think we're just running head first towards the cliff. Just feet on the ground, full clip, looking down, not looking ahead, and I think we're going right over a cliff with this thing.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, what are we going to do, though? I mean, China, Xi Jinping has come out and said that he believes that the winner to the race of AI will achieve global domination. So what do? It's
probably
try
true.
to control it? Is Americans, do you try to control it, or do you go, fuck it, we got to do it, man, we got to go, or China's going to pass us up, which they probably already have? But
I don't think they have. I think one of the things they're doing is they're stealing our tech. And there was some recent speculation that China had gotten access to some of OpenAI's work. They think it's possible, which means it probably did happen. I think there's probably a shit ton of espionage. I mean, this is the reason why they banned Huawei products from the United States. You know, I'm a cell phone dork. I really love technology. And Huawei had a phone that was coming out that I was really excited about. I'm like, this is crazy. Like, they were doing 100 megapixel cameras in phones way before anybody else. They had a Porsche design Huawei phone that was like this incredible phone. It was like built better than any other phone. It was much more expensive, but built better than any phone that you get in America. And I was like, wow, and this is back when I would use both Android and Apple regularly. And then they banned it. I was like, that sounds kind of crazy. Only one company? Like, there's other Chinese companies. Like,
yeah.
And then I started looking into it, and it's not just the cell phones. It's routers. It's all sorts of things. They found third-party inputs and different pieces of technology and different ways that they can exploit and use this stuff to siphon information from networks. Like, if they're attached to a network that's at a university and they're doing research projects, they can siphon that information. They also embed students in these places that are beholden to the CCP. These students rise up, get their PhDs, and some of them wind up going back to China. The whole thing is really strange because we're such an open, loose society that we're vulnerable to these kind of attacks.
Yeah.
You can't buy shit in China. You want to buy land in China? Good luck, fuckface. They won't sell you a house. They're not going to sell you land near the military base. You out of your fucking mind? But in America, we're so goofy. We let China buy up farmland that's near military bases.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then we let them sell us the cell phone towers surrounding the military bases. And we don't even check them.
Let them fly spy balloons, traverse the entire United States.
Apparently that was something they didn't want to tell Trump about. They hid that from Trump.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah, that was some of this had happened during the Trump administration, but they didn't tell him.
Yeah.
Because he'd probably like, shoot it down. Yeah. Fucking 100% he'd say shoot it down.
Why wouldn't you?
Why wouldn't you? They did eventually shoot it down.
It bothers me, though, like, maybe they're not ahead of us, but, I mean, the energy that they're building coal mines every day to power all this stuff, and we're going on about should we use fossil fuels or not.
Yeah.
And we just talked about how weak our grid is, so if we don't beef up the grid and start going, nuclear, then we're gonna fucking lose this race.
Well, not only that, like, how are you saying, like California, for example, California is not going to have internal combustion engine cars by 2035. By 2035, you have to buy only electric cars.
That happened?
I mean, it can be reversed for sure, and it probably will be once the Great War happens. But if you're going to say that and you have a grid that you have to shut down, like you have to do brownouts every summer because of people using the air conditioning. Yeah. And after he said that, after Newsom said this about this thing about 2035, within 2 months, they asked people to stop charging their Teslas because it was wrecking the grid. What?
Mind-blowing, right?
You're asking people to stop charging their electric cars. So, and you're not doing anything to strengthen your grid? Like, what are you doing to beef this up for 2035? Do you have some immense project that you're building that is going to make a much more sustainable, much more robust grid that's going to be able to handle 30 million electric cars in your state? Are you out of your fucking mind?
There's literally no. I mean, I look into this all the time. There's no infrastructure going in to correct the problem because the problem is so big that nobody wants to tackle it.
Yeah, and it's a long-term problem. You know, just like when they talk about like putting in chip manufacturing plants, like NVIDIA just stopped its production in Austin. See what happened with that. So apparently they weren't achieving the results that they demanded, that they desire. You know, like you have to have certain tolerances when you're making these computer chips. And so they set this plant up in Texas, and I think they just canceled the contracts for a bunch of people working there because they've kind of recognized that this is just not going to work.
Why is it going to work?
Good question. I didn't really get into it. I just read part of it.
I was
asking Jamie to pull it up. I think it's not meeting their standards.
NVIDIA is the company. Didn't they start buying?
Maybe it was Samsung.
Didn't NVIDIA start producing all their chips in the ocean? They're buying like these massive like ships.
Really?
You'd have to look that up.
In the ocean?
I don't know. There's a huge thing that Intel did in Ohio. They're still trying to do it to make chips there for semiconductors or whatever. And part of the reason,
but this was in Texas.
No, I know. I just say part of the reason they picked it was because there's no seismic activity there.
Oh, that makes sense.
Like in the ocean sounds opposite of that.
Super sketch.
Interesting.
Why are they doing it in the ocean though?
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't look into
international law.
It was one of those articles I started reading and I was like, I don't understand any of this shit. But
yeah, see if you can find the Texas one. They're canceling see if it's Samsung. God damn it! I was just reading it too.
Multiple semiconductor manufacturing projects delayed in the U.S. That's a month old.
No, this is popped up. Pretty recent. This is pretty recent. They were talking about they're not achieving the results that they desire, which is what my point is. It's a long-term project in order to get up to the manufacturing levels that China's at right now. It's a long-term project. We're really behind this.
Yeah,
like they're way ahead of us. They make everything. And they make amazing things now. It used to be made in China was junk. Made in China, they make some of the most incredible electric cars you could buy.
Well, the drone game, too. I mean, that's the future of warfare, right? Mm-hmm. Is all these drone swarms. Mm-hmm. And DJI, that's a Chinese company. And this is going to be a big fucking problem when we realize, hey, the next one isn't going to be guys in caves anymore.
Right. Samsung withdraws its personnel from, Taylor plant located in Texas due to 2NMGAA yields unable to improve beyond the 10 to 20% range. That's it. Click on that. So see what it says. So it is Samsung. So this is an enormous project that Samsung and everybody was all excited. Samsung was going to start making chips. So the Taylor Hub was initially planned to mass produce wafers of advanced processes below the 4nm, I don't know what that means, nanometer lithography, allowing Samsung to secure lucrative clients in the U.S. Unfortunately, despite progressing with the chip-making plant, the company has faced a challenge that has become all too familiar with the entity, ensuring healthy yields, particularly with its 2nm process. The situation surrounds 3nm GAA is not pretty either, with Business Korea reporting that Samsung's yields for this technology stand at 50%, whereas TSMC has a significant lead as its 3 nanometer yields are in the 60 to 70% range.
So that's the Taiwan semiconductor company.
Yeah, so it's they're just not good enough yet. I mean, they're doing it from the ground up, and there's gonna be a lot of trial and error. It's gonna take a long ass time. I mean, remember when SpaceX started? And rockets were exploding, and people were like, "Oh my God, the rocket exploded!" And Elon was like, "Yeah, we're gonna blow some rockets up because we have to figure out exactly what the tolerances are and how to do it correctly." And this is all part of the process. We knew this was going to happen.
Yeah.
And that's when you're doing something that's that enormous. Like if you want to start making all the computers here, like good Lord, that is a stretch. They've been doing it over there for so long. They've got it down to a science.
Yeah.
And, you've got all these companies, whether it's Lenovo or they've been manufacturing laptops forever, manufacturing chips and hard drives and processors. And, to catch up with them, good Lord, they're so far ahead of us.
Yeah. It's, I mean, I hope it comes back to the U.S., but I would like to see us just start getting stuff from somebody other than China.
That'd be nice.
Be a great start,
Well, I think Samsung has stopped making their phones in China. I think they're the only country.
Did they really?
Yeah. Google that. 90% sure that's true.
This article is saying that these NVIDIA chips, which are I guess are ours because it's a Silicon Valley based company, puts the U.S. way further ahead of China
with artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
The gap between China and the U.S. leading in artificial intelligence chip technology is set to widen even further after NVIDIA founder and chief executive Jensen Huang unveiled next-generation processors for what he called a new era of generative AI and robotics used in industries. But we're right, but we're not making those. But the thing is, the other part of it is, they're going to get access to this stuff. This is the really creepy thing that people keep admitting, is that it's very porous. The top secret information that these companies have, espionage is super common. It's so valuable.
Yeah.
It's so lucrative that sometimes they probably don't even know when stuff is getting siphoned over there.
Well, I mean, you have to just think. I mean, it's Chinese. From what I understand, it's Chinese law that any business that is being conducted within China, if the technology helps the military or could potentially help the military, then CCP has access.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's end of story. So any fucking thing over there that's being developed or manufactured, it's all of that technology is in their hands.
Yeah.
It just is. It's not.
Yeah, countries, what China's doing is companies do not get to function on their own. They function under the wing of the government.
Yeah, they suck these American companies in with getting around the red tape, and then it's in the cheap labor, cheap prices, and then once it's going, I mean, they control it. Do you want this money train to end right now? Because
exactly.
You're not in America, buddy.
And people are whores, and they just go over there.
Yeah.
They take that money, got a great deal, thinking about buying a jet.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen what they do. It's pretty amazing stuff. Do you know the story about the woman who was working on anti-gravity technology?
No.
She was working on anti-gravity technology. She was originally from China and then disappeared and went back to China. She apparently was making some breakthroughs and came back to America and wound up dead. I forget how she died, but some slippery circumstances where you're like car accident or something like that.
Yeah.
You're like,
Damn.
Yeah.
It's
that's wild.
Like the guy that came up with the Hydra engine.
Yes. Oh, that guy. Yeah, the guy that came with the water engine. That's a great story too. But that this woman, if they've developed some sort of anti-gravity technology, and I've always wondered when we're looking at these things that people are calling UAPs or whatever you want to call them, like how many of those are super sophisticated drones? It's not zero. It's not 0%. Like I'm not saying that there's not a real phenomenon going on that people are seeing that defies science and logic and might be a super intelligent creature from somewhere else, or a super intelligent thing from somewhere else, if it's even biological at this point. It might be that all life eventually becomes digital life, and all life eventually becomes some sort of artificial intelligence, or at least connected to artificial intelligence. That might be like the progression of biological life, that eventually creates something way better than itself, and that's what propagates the universe. And if someone in this world has developed some sort of technology that's similar to what they use, that's a huge advantage.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that gets me about all this UAP talk. I'm like, if some other country had, or if we had, something that was just a game changer, something that didn't require any propulsion systems at all, it relied on gravity, and it bends space and time and can instantaneously traverse between one point in the sky and another, that kind of technology is nuts. And if that is in the hands of the United States government, it would make sense that it would like help them to like spread this UFO nonsense.
Yeah. I mean, you've dove into this more than anybody else I know. I mean, what do you think it all is?
I think it's a bunch of things. I think there is a possibility, a very strong possibility, that there's life out there, and that if I was life out there and I was much more advanced than us, I would definitely visit us. And there's also the fact that the sightings kicked up in a huge way after 1945. After the atomic bomb, after they did the Trinity experiment, and after they dropped the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, all those nuclear tests that they did in the 50s and the 60s, that's exactly when the sightings start ramping up. And if I was an intelligent life force from another planet, I would go, oh, these crazy monkeys have nukes. And then we'd have to, you'd have to think, okay, do we intervene? Well, if they blow themselves up, it will take so long for that planet to get back to a point where it has intelligent life again. If they kill every person on this planet, we're back to shrews and mice and fucking a couple of monkeys in the jungle. How long before you can get a city again? How long before you can get a cell phone again? How many millions of years does it take? And if I was an intelligent life force that realized that this is an error that can be corrected, I would probably correct it. I'd probably put a stop to the nukes. I'd probably make a show of force, hover over military bases, shut down all of their electronics, shut down just to let them know.
Yeah.
I would probably do that. But, how much do they actually intervene? And how many of them are there? Are there different ones? I mean, if there's one that comes here, who's to say there's not a shit ton of different kinds? Some of them malevolent, some of them that only want us for our biology, some of them that are just doing tests on us, some of them that are, kidnapping people and erasing their memories and putting them back in the woods. Those stories are too common. There's too many stories that are real fucking similar. Like the Travis Walton story. Have you ever heard that one?
What's that one?
This guy was a logger in the 1970s. He was in was it Oregon?
Oh, did they make a movie about this?
Yeah. Fire in the Sky.
I've seen it. Yeah, I've seen it.
Crazy story.
Kind of like that. Do you know who is that? Chris Bledsoe?
No.
Have you heard of him?
What's that one?
Chris Bledsoe. He's a guy that had an experience as well. You've not heard of Chris Bledsoe?
Maybe I haven't or forgot. It's possible.
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing. His memory's kind of gone, and that's what it sounds like. And
they all have a very similar story. They get medical examinations, and there's girls that were pregnant and like newly pregnant and got abducted, and all of a sudden they weren't pregnant anymore, and they couldn't figure out what happened.
Wow, I didn't know that.
There's quite a few of those. John Mack had this book. John Mack was a psychologist who was at Harvard, who wrote this book. I think it's called Abduction. And it's all like him interviewing people that have had these kind of experiences happen to them. And this book was in the 1990s, right? So there was, I don't think these people got to share stories where they could come up with the same story organically. Like today, you've heard so many stories online about UFO abductions or crash retrieval or something that you could formulate in your own mind a dream that seemed like these things that you had heard over and over and over again. But when you go back to like Betty and Barney Hill, which were one of the first people that ever got abducted by aliens, they have the same sort of story as all these different people that didn't know anything about the phenomenon, didn't know anything about UFO abductions, and then all of a sudden had one event in their life that freaked them out for the rest of their life. And they take them through hypnotic progression. And these people, you should hear the recordings of Betty and Barney Hill. They're like yelling and screaming. They're freaking out. Like, no one thought about being abducted by aliens in the 1950s or whenever that was.
Yeah.
But these people have this wild fucking story that's super similar to all these different stories that John Mack talks about. And maybe there's different kinds of aliens. Maybe there's aliens that are just like our scientists that just come down here and study and report on like the state of the biological entity known as the human beings and visit and return. And maybe they monitor us and watch us and make sure that we don't do anything really fucking stupid. Like, give us enough room to we figure it out on our own, but don't intervene unless they're about to nuke themselves.
Interesting.
That's best case scenario.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what all this is, man. I just, I try to dive into it on the podcast and have talked to, a handful of guys, and I don't know, man.
Some people are 100%, like Billy Carson's all in. I found out about him on your show too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'd seen a couple of clips of him, but I'd never seen a long form interview of him until your show. That was a great episode. He's fun. He was on my friend Andrew Schultz's podcast, and Andrew was like, "We're not going to check nothing. We're just going to let him go. No fact checks. Let's just have fun and see." But when he starts talking about like those ancient tablets, he's an expert in like the deciphering of all those ancient tablets, and he's got a lot of information on that. Those things are fascinating because it's all the same stories even back then. These flying ships and all these different depictions of things that came from the sky, and these giants and the Anunnaki and all these different things that came from some other place that had interaction with human beings. And
yeah, he kind of like mixes it with biblical stuff, right? That's kind of, I don't know, that's what I lean towards with all this stuff, to be honest with you, is... Maybe I think there's some consciousness aspect. I think it is the afterlife.
It's possible, that's for sure. It's possible that whatever these things are that come here, they're from some sort of another dimension, and that we just don't have the ability to interact with that. We're limited in our capacity as a biological entity to interact with these dimensions that are real, but we just can't access them. We can't get to it. We don't have the frequency. We don't have what it is. But in some cases, under duress, under some situations, in some, just like a person can be hypnotized, just like a person can go into a trance, I think there's a way every now and then that people can kind of access these realms. And I think that's probably what some of these entities are. I think people are probably having real experiences with something that probably is real, but that normally you cannot interact with.
Yeah. Have you ever looked into? Because I think I kind of group all this stuff in together. But have you looked into the remote viewing stuff?
Yeah, I have. Yeah,
dude.
Yeah,
that stuff.
Pretty nuts.
Yeah.
I had a remote. I did this show called Joe Rogan Questions Everything. And we had remote viewers on, and we tried to get them to do things. They couldn't really, it wasn't really effective. But I'm also like, okay, this is an unnatural environment. It's a television show. It's like weird pressure. The skeptical people that are like looking at this, and I don't know if they're the real. I think it's probably a skill that can be developed, but I don't know how consistent it is. It's like, I don't believe in psychics, but I do believe that sometimes you just know things, and sometimes you get a premonition, and I think the connection that people have with each other is not as simple as like you call your friend up, hey, I haven't talked to you in forever. I think we're connected somehow quantumly. I think we're all connected in some sort of a weird, undiscovered way, and that's why like you're thinking about someone and they call you sometimes. People say, oh, that's just a coincidence. Man, I don't know about all that. Because sometimes it's someone I haven't talked to for fucking years.
Yeah.
And you'll be having a conversation with a buddy, and you just start thinking about that guy, and then all of a sudden your phone rings. And
Happens all the time, man.
That's weird.
That's I mean, what they say, we use 10% of our brain.
That's not real.
You know,
I don't think that's real.
you don't.
No. They what that was. They didn't really understand when they were saying that. They didn't really understand what the brain does and what parts of the brain do, and they thought that like we're only using 10%. No, it's like different parts of the brain have very different functions, and under different circumstances, different parts of the brain are activated. I think just we have a limited understanding of the actual function of the brain, like the whole thing, and how it's making chemicals and making psychedelic compounds and hormones and epinephrine and norepinephrine and all this different dopamine and serotonin, and how it regulates your system and changes the way you interact with the world. It's all weird stuff, man. I don't think they completely have like they can't recreate a human brain, you know?
Yeah. You know, some of this. Have you heard of Joe McMonagle?
No.
Dude, you have to talk to him.
Who's he?
He is remote viewer number 1 for the U.S. But he's not like kooky or anything like that at all. He's
Really?
no.
How do you not be kooky in your remote viewer?
He just to have a conversation with him. He's there.
Okay.
And, no weird vibes, not from my end, anyways. But